Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. It's our bye-week episode. Not a whole lot to talk about this week, except that there kind of is a couple of things to talk about. We'll get to some of the trades that went on earlier today. This is on Tuesday, the day of the trade deadline. The trade deadline has passed, and the Steelers have made a couple of moves, so we will be talking about that. But before we do so, myself, Zane, and David are going to kind of go through each position group, maybe a couple of players, and also a couple of other aspects, and we're going to give our first half grades. I don't remember the last time that we've had a bye week right in the middle of the season. I feel like usually we're pretty early or pretty late, so it's kind of nice that we can kind of have this mid-season bye to kind of look at things from a first half, second half perspective, and maybe kind of give our thoughts on that. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. David, did you watch any of the games during this week, during the bye week?
I didn't watch any specifically. I watched some of the Monday night game. I watched a little bit of the Sunday night, and then just bits and pieces here or there. At the end of the Rams game, which was pretty crazy, and I kept up with the Bengals and Ravens, unfortunately, and I got to keep updated with the Browns doing horrible, so that was good.
Well, that was the other thing that I was thinking about is, we didn't lose the bye week this year like we did last year, but we kind of did in that we didn't get any help. The Ravens won, the Bengals won, the Chargers won, the Chiefs won, the Bills won. Everybody in the AFC that is contending pretty much won this week, except for the Texans. And that was kind of the Thursday night game. But as far as things go, we didn't really pick up any ground this week. So kind of an interesting week where we were just kind of sitting on our hands.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I didn't even think about all the other teams inside our division winning. But yeah, the Texans game, that was interesting for sure. That Garrett Wilson catch was ridiculous. However, in my opinion, I don't think that type of catch should be a catch, but I will continue it's interesting because if the Bengals had lost this past week, I'd be going into next week thinking, all right, go Bengals, beat the Ravens. But now going into this Bengals-Ravens game this upcoming week, I don't want the Bengals to get any more momentum because then we got two people to deal with. And so it's it's a double-edged sword, really. Whoever wins, it's just not, you're not going to feel good about it.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like the Bengals are, you've talked about it, that they're not out of it by any means. They're never out of it. And Joe Burrow is pretty much single-handedly winning them games at times. So it's a scary proposition, and, that's what makes those games against the Bengals so much more important. I think at this point we're in a pretty good spot to make the playoffs just at base level. It would take a pretty royal collapse, I think, to not make the playoffs. But given
We've seen those before.
We have.
Before.
So it is not out of the question. And again, I think the Bengals are a better team than maybe their record suggests. And obviously, the Ravens are the Ravens, and it's going to be a war in this second half with the two games we have against them, and then trying to find out who's going to win the AFC North by the way that things are done. But I do want to start off, so we're going to go through our grades. And I think the first place to start, obviously, is with the quarterbacks. Give an A, B, C, D, F rating to Justin Fields, who played 6 games.
Okay, I would give Justin a B. I think he's a solid B. I completely agree with what Mike Tomlin's quote is of he's good, not great. And so I think that he has a ton of potential to be great, but off of the games that we've seen, I'd say it's a solid, B rating.
I would give him a B minus. I think he left a little bit on the table, but again, I think I'm leaning in the similar direction as you in that there's so much potential there, and I would like to see him back, whether Russ and him are back next year or if it's just Fields. I would like to see Fields back in some respect. Now, we'll go to Russ, who has played 2 games against 2 New York teams. What do you give him for a grade?
Well, I think it's a little bit harder with him because of the smaller sample size, but I'll go B plus. I think that the only thing that's stopping me from going to like an A minus or something is that there have been just a few throws here and there that are a little underthrown. However, the way the offense moves with him at quarterback is very different to how it moved with Justin Fields. It makes me even want to say A minus right now, but I think that he's got some kinks to work out for sure. But I'd say that I just am very impressed with how the offense moves with him as our quarterback.
For that very reason, I'm going to give him an A minus. I think his play action prowess has opened up the offense to a level that we haven't seen in a very long time. And I think just simply the threat of Russell Wilson turning back the clock, I think that has unlocked our offense in a lot of ways. So I'm going to give him an A minus.
Okay.
We're going to take this as a blanket statement. Running backs as a whole.
I'm gonna say when healthy, even not when healthy, A. Like absolutely, Najee Harris gets an A plus, and yeah, I'm loving the run game, and that's obviously our bread and butter, and we gotta keep that going. And yeah, I'm gonna say A. It's solid. I've not been disappointed in the run game. I don't think really at all this year.
I'm going to say similar thing. A, I think if Najee can continue to do what he has been doing these last 3 weeks, 3 straight 100-yard games, if he can continue to do that, going back to Russell Wilson, he opens up the play-action pass, and that has been very effective for our offense. So I'm going to give it an A as well. Wide receivers, interesting. And again, we're taking this from the context of the full season. So maybe not right where we're at now, but the context of the full season. What do you give the wide receivers?
Okay, this might be a little harsh, but I think I want to go D. Like, I think besides George Pickens, like, obviously, like, we've talked, like, yeah, guys in the past couple of weeks have made more catches, and I do like Calvin Austin, and I don't dislike any of our receivers, but it's kind of like a, who are you? You have done, like, you don't, yeah, I would say D. There is no output of these guys. There's barely output of George Pickens. Obviously, that's increased. So I would say D. There needs to be improvement across the whole board with that.
I'm going to give him a C minus simply because my baseline for most grades is a C is average. I would say as a whole, our wide receiving core is slightly below average. And I think that I might have been more in a D plus area if the production of the first 6 weeks had continued, but they have started to up their production a little bit, so I think they're trending in the right direction. So I'm going to give them a C minus. You said what, a D? Straight up D?
Yeah.
Okay. Tight ends. What do you make of our tight ends?
The tight ends, I'm gonna give an A. I think that we've got depth. I think Pat Freiermuth obviously is the standard, and he hasn't been getting a lot of touches, but when he does get the ball, he's lighting it up. I would love to see him get the ball more. Darnell Washington is really proving himself over these past couple of weeks, so I'm loving that depth. And then Connor Hayward obviously still hasn't made a huge play, but I'm perfectly content with all of them, and I think that all of them are playmakers.
I'm going to give the tight ends a B+, and the reason I don't go any higher is because how limited they've been utilized in a way. They haven't been used a whole lot this season. Now, I do agree with that Darnell Washington take. I think that he is a wild card in this offense in a way. He's good for like a 20 to 30-yard catch every week, and I'm trying to think in my mind, have you ever seen him tackled? Have you ever seen him actually on the ground? Or is it just that they end up forcing him out of bounds and he's never... Can you remember the last time he's actually been tackled?
I can't. That's a great point, actually. I have no idea. I've never thought about that, but I guess it's true. All I can think is him getting pushed out of bounds. That's crazy.
I mean, every time he gets the ball, he is never actually brought to the ground. And the only reason that he is actually stopped eventually is because they force him out of bounds. He's not fast by any means, but, I mean, he's going to bowl people over. If he has field in front of him, he's going to keep on churning, and that's a really underrated weapon I think that we have. And, again, with Pat Freiermuth, I think he is definitely very good. I just don't think that we have been using him enough to where he gets a higher grade, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that.
Offensive line. Interesting prospect.
Okay, so offensive line, I'm gonna go C minus, and I feel like that's honestly a high rating for them, and I'm gonna give them that because of the run game, like we've talked about. That it's hard to tell sometimes how much of it is Najee or them, but the run game has been working well. I feel like Najee's been able to get 2 or 3 yards at least before contact, which is very different from the past few years. So I love that. Pass game obviously could be better. However, I think that Russ has been pretty well protected these past 2 games. Obviously, there's been some plays, but I'd say overall that we have like an average O-line this year.
I'm going to give them a B. And I think the reason why is because they've been hurt, and they've honestly been scrounging to find some guys. And for that reason, I think they've picked up the slack a little bit. Yes, do we have those really bad plays on occasion? Yes, they happen. Broderick Jones is kind of the one you single out on occasion. But I think as a unit, I think they've been better, and I think they've been getting better too. Possibility of Zach Frazier coming back for this Commanders week, that's going to be huge. I think with what they have been, with what they are, I mean, you think about James Daniels going down early on in the season. I mean, a season-ending injury. I mean, they've been hurt. Troy Fautanu, they haven't even gotten to see what he can do yet. They have done a lot with a little, and I'm happy with them for that very reason. So I give them a little bit higher of a grade there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. It's interesting. One of the reasons why I went a little lower is because of that, where it's like, who knows what our ceiling is with these guys because of all the injuries.
Right. Okay. Now we're moving to the defense, which is an very interesting unit, I think. Defensive line. We'll start with the interior defensive line.
Interior defensive line, I'm going to give a D+. The run game that we've seen from these teams has been kind of scary. Like, I get that it's not all the D line, but I think that it definitely starts there, winning the line of scrimmage. And obviously there's plays that we do that. But I think that, and as far as even getting pressure to the quarterback, which we haven't seen as much this year, I think that there needs to be kind of improvement, which, who knows, we'll talk about the trades that could have maybe added a factor. But, I'd say that this is not the D-line that the Steelers are used to. I think it's a grade below what it's normally used to, and I think it needs to get back to the steel curtain.
I agree with a lot of that, and I'm going to give them a C. I think it's pretty impossible to give them anything lower than a C because Cam Hayward has been there. I think Larry Ogunjobi has had good games, but as a whole, he has not been exceptional this season. And honestly, it's a position that they're kind of thin at. They don't have a lot of depth in the interior line, which I think plays a part of that. So with the run game being a big problem, I don't know if it's necessarily a problem. It's kind of a problem. It's a problem. So that's definitely something that they need to improve upon, I think, especially in the interior stuff. But now let's go to the edge, our edge rushers.
I'm going to go A-. Not really, I think, a surprise here. Even though we've kind of been getting on, like, where the heck's TJ Watt? He obviously showed up last week, and I think that, like, all of these guys, Watt, Highsmith, and Herbeck, have all made their name and face known in these games. Like, the quarterbacks know where they are. They're affecting the game in every which way. And so, I think that it's hard to be upset with those guys when they make so many plays as they do. And I think that, they're arguably like the best part of our whole team. So the only reason why I think I said A- is just because of, I would love to see just more consistently. Like, obviously last game was great, but the 2 games before that, it was kind of like a where'd they go? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. I'm going to give them an A. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think just they show up when it matters the most, if that makes sense. Yep. Take out that Colts game. That Colts game was kind of an anomaly. But they got home when it mattered the most in the last couple of weeks, and that's what matters the most. If you can close out games the way that they've been closing out games, and they've been getting more pressure recently. Alex Highsmith had a heck of a game 2 weeks ago against the Giants, and TJ Watt, he finds a way to get home, and not just get home, but actually get the ball out. And I think the forced fumbles is such a luxury that we have been accustomed to being normalized in a way. And I think that we need to realize, okay, I don't think that really is this normal for us to have this many turnovers and this many splash plays in big moments the way that we have had them. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give them an A. I'm kind of leaning towards A+, because I truly believe that Watt and Highsmith is the best edge duo in the entire National Football League. And we're going to talk about how our edges have gotten a little bit more bolstered up here as the trade deadline happened today. Linebackers.
I think I'm also going to go D+. I think that, like, when we're looking at our defense, and when we've talked about our defense on a weekly basis, I think that the one point that we're coming to is the linebackers, and like Patrick Queen still trying to figure things out. So, and even more with the run game and helping out in the pass, I think that, like, you know, these guys, like, obviously, yeah, we got our edge rushers as splash players and stuff, and our secondary does a lot. But, like, your middle is the rock of your defense, and you need that rock to be stable, and I don't think it really has been almost all year. So I think it does need a lot of improvement.
I'm going to also say a D+. I think with the firepower that they have, I think it's a little bit disappointing with their lack of production this season. I would still love to see more out of Patrick Queen. I think Elandon Roberts has been very good.
Yeah.
I just don't think that he has been good enough, if that makes sense. And it's probably a product of the lack of splash plays that we have seen from the two guys that are on either side of him. And I think that's kind of something that needs to be fixed. And I think if they play well, then this defense is almost complete in a way. Would you agree to that?
I would agree. And I think that it's an interesting thing just to think about, because you look at these past, well, honestly, ever since Shazier, we've gotten guys, you know, we drafted people, we brought in guys, Miles Jack, like Cole Holcomb, like these guys that, like, are coming from other teams and, like, they look good. Like, Patrick Queen looked great. These other guys look great. And then none of them can hack it as our middle linebacker. And so it just makes me go to wonder, you know, like, is it our scheming? Like, are we missing on every single player that we get to come and be a middle linebacker? Or is it our scheming? So I think that'll be, like, going into the rest of the year, an interesting thing to look at, to see, like, all right, what is it really? Because there's obviously one denominator here, in that it's like, you know, all these linebackers are coming and going, but our scheme is staying the same. So it's like, is our scheme broken in that way? I think it's an interesting thing to keep an eye on.
All right, now the secondary, and we're going to clump the safeties and the corners into one group here, because I think that they're pretty complementary of each other. The way that we play defense, again, going back to last week, is very simple. We don't put anybody on an island, really. Usually we have help in places, and the times that we do have people on an island, you know, it's still very loosely, there's loose help in places, if that makes sense. So secondary as a whole, lumping in the cornerbacks and the safeties.
I'm going to go A. I think that this has been arguably you could say they perform better than the rushers in the line. I think that I've been very impressed with them, and I like, you know, all the players back there. I think they're all doing their job. They're all playing their part, and, like, we haven't seen, at least I don't think, we haven't seen, like, a receiver go absolutely crazy against us. And it's been very encouraging to see. So, yeah, I'm going to go A. I haven't been disappointed in them really at all.
I'm going to give them a B+. There are some plays that, again, just like in years past, I'm wondering, okay, why is he just by himself? Or why is he sitting 20 yards from the line of scrimmage completely alone in the secondary? There's a couple of those plays that, again, just get me worried on occasion. And just being straight up, we are still yet to face a really good quarterback. Dak Prescott is probably the best quarterback we've faced so far. and we are going to face the Ravens twice with Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Like, we've got some real quarterbacks that we're going to be facing up against, and they have weapons at wide receiver. Some a little bit more so than others, but I think about the Eagles. I mean, you think about their attack with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. Like, you got a 1-2 punch like that. That's going to be a real test for this secondary, and I don't know if I've seen quite enough yet. The only real game that you could really say that they did a lot, or they did very well against a good receiving core, was the Jets game. They held Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Alan Lazard, and Mike Williams in check. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. But again, how much of that is on the fact that Aaron Rodgers is, 45, 49, 55 years old?
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's a great point. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. That'll be the real test if they can hold up against these Pro Bowl MVP quarterbacks, and their receiving cores. I think that they're definitely going to get tested the second half.
So there is one thing. We're not quite done with our grades yet. We have 3 more things to grade, and they're kind of these blanket things. But we are getting Cam Sutton back this week from his suspension. How does he slot into this? Is he going to be more of their primary guy, or what are you thinking that they should do with Cam Sutton coming back?
I'm not quite sure. I know that we used him when we had him. I think more in the slot, like not the main guy, but I think he was more of a slot role filler. But I don't know what he did when he was in Detroit.
He was kind of all over the place, and I think that was the reason that he didn't play as well. I think they kind of used him out of position, so his numbers weren't very flashy. And again, that's a lot of what a lot of people have said is that's the reason why he didn't play as well in Detroit.
Well, I'd say I would love to have him back on the outside because he was really good on the outside, and having him, I'm blanking. Who else on the outside? Is Porter?
Beanie Bishop is out there too, and then Dante Jackson.
Dante Jackson, that's right. It's tough because I love all 3 of those guys where they are playing right now, but I think that you give Cam Sutton a chance on the outside or even in the middle. And just kind of, I'd say more on the outside, but I'm not sure which one he'll be best at, so I'm kind of open to either. What about you?
I'm with you on that. Now, I will ask you this. Does your grade on the cornerbacks change with Cam Sutton now in the picture?
I'd say it would probably stay in A because of like what you said with the schedule. I think that the getting Cam Sutton, but then the schedule kind of evens those 2 things out. Okay,
that makes a lot of sense. All right, we got 3 more things to grade, and then we're going to get to our trades. Defense, holistically. What do you make of our defense as a whole?
Holistically, I'd say I'd give it a C. I think that...
Wow! A C! That's crazy!
Listen, look, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Your defense is either great or it's not, and I think that there have been some red flags. Like I'm seeing some red flags here, on this defense, and I'm like, oh, like how's that going to fare out? Like again, you said we haven't had the best competition yet, and it's like we're seeing these red flags, and it's like, oh, like what's going to happen when the Chiefs do that, or when the Eagles rushing game comes into town? I'd say that, by no means this is a bad defense, and by no means am I upset with it. But with the way our offense has performed the past 2 games, I would have expected our defense. I guess they did the second half of the Jets game in the second quarter, but this last game against the Giants, when your offense is playing this good, it's just I'm nervous that the parity swing is happening like it always does, where it's like, oh, offense good, defense not as good. And it's just like, well, no, let's both stay great. Let's both stay at A's.
That's crazy. A C. That's insane.
What's your rating?
They're an A for me because they have not given up a point in the 3rd quarter this year. They are yet to give up a single point in the third quarter. I mean, call it what it is. You talk about the competition. I get it. I know they haven't played a great offense yet. And if you look back to the beginning of the season, you think about the Falcons, the Chargers, and the Broncos. If you want to look retrospectively back to those games, you can do that, but I think you're doing that in error because it was Kirk Cousins in his first game coming off of an Achilles tear. It was Bo Nix in his second game ever when he's staring down TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, and then a pretty much hurt Justin Herbert on a team that really didn't have an identity yet. Those are the three really good games that are really ramping up our strength of victory right now. Those teams keep winning for some reason, and, it's helping us. It's very good for us. But if you look in the context of things, you put that in the past, and the defensive play against those teams was incredible, making us think that we had one of the best defenses in the league.
Yeah.
Now, all of that to say, I think this is still one of the best defenses in the league. I think it's still top 5. I think they know how to be good when it matters. And again, these next 9 weeks or whatever, this is going to be the litmus test to see, okay, is this what you're really made out of? And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of drop-off. I think that they're going to contain Lamar Jackson. I think that they're going to maintain at least a solid level of defense against Jaden Daniels this coming week. And Jalen Hurts kind of scares me, and then Joe Burrow kind of scares me a little bit too. But at the same time, I think that we're working in the right direction with this defense. And again, getting Cam Sutton in there helps out a lot. And I think maybe it's a good time to throw in our trades for right now. We'll get to our offense, and one more grade I want to give. Preston Smith was acquired from the Green Bay Packers today for a 7th round pick. That is crazy. And the buzz on social media right now, and from a lot of Packers fans, is, what the heck? What did we just do? What was the deal behind that? Now, I get it. He's a little bit older. I think he's 31 years old. But I'm looking at his numbers. He has sacks. He's good for 8 sacks minimum a year. He already has 3 in 9 games this season. He has several fumble recoveries, several forced fumbles, a handful of interceptions, and several pass deflections. Now, the one thing that I noticed about him in the numbers is he's definitely not the best in pass defense, but in run defense, as an edge rusher, he has been well above average. So, what do you make of this deal? How do you like it? Maybe even give a grade on this deal.
Well, I was definitely surprised. I had no idea that this, was even. I knew we were looking at receiver. Totally surprised by this pick, especially because he's an edge rusher. And so, I remember him from when they had Aaron Rodgers and they were in their peak, Green Bay. And so I like him a lot. And I think that getting him from a 7th round pick is just ridiculous. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad trade at all. My only question is just how he'll be used. Because if, he stays in the edge rusher role, he's obviously not going to start. I guess he could be sampled in more, give our guys breathers more, and just get more depth. So I really think that this is, you couldn't go wrong with this trade. So I'd probably give it an A+, just because there's literally no negative to this. There's no, if you could get him for a 7th round pick, there is no reason not to do this trade.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think depth is the idea behind why they did it. I think that they had reason to go out and make sure that they had depth at the position. And I think doing it with a quality guy, Green Bay is kicking themselves right now. Green Bay is a playoff team. They're fighting for, the NFC North?
I think it's the North.
That's an absolute gauntlet of a division, kind of like ours. And again, he's a little bit older, but the production is there. And again, you put him in on obvious run plays, and you give him a shot to kind of do some damage and, see what he can do. I love the deal. I give it an A+ as well, especially, like you said, for a 7th round pick, you can't go wrong with that. Now, our other move today, and the wide receiver saga is finally over for Pittsburgh. The Steelers traded a 5th-round pick for Mike Williams. David, what are your thoughts on this one?
I was actually in a class for like my RA duties, and one of the guys that I was with was a Steelers fan, and he like looks at his phone and then just out of nowhere says all of that for Mike Williams, and I was like, what? And then I forgot that he was a Steelers fan, and then I remembered, and I was like, oh man, I was like, we got Mike Williams, and like I'd be lying if I didn't say that my first initial reaction was disappointment, because there's so many secondary guys that I think have a lot of higher stock right now, have a lot of more potential output. But at the end of the day, he was consistent with the Chargers. I remember last year, I think he was doing good until he got hurt, maybe that was 2 years ago. And then he hasn't done anything on the Jets. So I'm kind of worried. I'm like, man, like, is he going to continue this streak of like, is he going to disappear just like the rest of our guys? So yeah, I'd say this one, again, a 5th-round pick, not bad at all. So that's, glad we're not giving up a crazy deal. And so I think it's kind of like a prove-it trade, where the other guys would have been more like, okay, yeah, like I think he'll put output. But like him, I'm like, he could fall off just like all the other guys. So I'm a little nervous with this one. I think that, Mike Williams, I think he could perform well, but I think it's a big if.
I'm a little hot and cold with this one. I think there's a lot of upside with it. However, I'm not exactly thrilled with the 5th-round pick. And I understand that with the 6th-round pick that's kind of tied to Justin Fields right now, obviously it's a conditional pick. They really couldn't do anything lower than a 5th-round pick. But when you see that DeAndre Hopkins got traded for a 5th-round pick, like that makes me a little bit, I'm not sure. Yeah. Like, if they would have done a pick swap, like maybe we received like, a 6th or a 7th-round pick or something with that, then I would have been a little bit more warm to it. Again, I like the upside with Mike Williams, just that I'm not exactly sure that a 5th-round pick was good for his value. I think they could have gotten more for what they paid, if that makes sense. Like, Adam Thielen was a name that floated around there, Darius Slayton. There's options out there, and I just kind of wondered if we settled on Mike Williams, or if maybe that was the only thing that was really available.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because it's an interesting thought of settling, because maybe they just didn't get deals they wanted with the other guys. But it's true. Like, Adam Thielen was floating around. Darius Slayton played great against us, and Mike Williams did not play good against us. And, Jacoby Myers is out there. I mentioned, obviously, this would have been a stretch, but Jalen Waddle. Like, there was a lot of guys that I think, like, if, say, we make the same trade for and we get a different guy, I think we'd be like, oh, yeah, like, okay, like, he can fit in. Versus, like, Mike Williams, where you're like, oh, okay, like, we'll see. Like, I think it's not as exciting as I was hoping it would be.
It's definitely not going to jump off the page at you, but I still think it's sufficient. And when I asked you the question last week about should we even go out and get a wide receiver, my idea was I don't really know if we need to. And maybe that's just the short-term bias that I had with the 2 games that we had under Russ. But my understanding is that he's kind of unlocked the offense in a way that it makes Van Jefferson a little bit more viable. It makes Calvin Austin a little bit more viable. It makes George Pickens a whole lot more viable. So in my mind, I was kind of thinking, I don't know if we really need to get another wide receiver. So in that, I think it kind of makes it to where Mike Williams is welcome, in my opinion. It's not this like home run splash play in a way, but it's sufficient in my mind, because retrospectively I was thinking that kind of what we had was already sufficient. So I'm not mad at it. I'm not necessarily happy at it. I think it's just one of those things where time will tell how this one pans out.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, our last grade before we touch very quickly on the Commanders game coming up. Coaching. As a whole unit, what grade do you give the coaching in the first 8 games of the season?
I'm gonna go C minus. I think that in perfect Tomlin fashion, he's not horrible and he's not great. He's average, and I think we've seen that over these first 8 games, and I obviously a little improvement in the past couple of games offensively speaking. I think Arthur Smith by himself would get a higher grade, probably in the B's, because I do like what he's been doing. But I think overall, it's not too different of a team in the past few years, so I'd stick around a C or a C minus.
I'm going to say that the coaching staff as a whole gets an A, and
wow.
I know that I don't know if you're going to hate me for this one. I think Mike Tomlin is different this year, and I don't know if you see that or not. Maybe the shadows are kind of blinding you to that, but I think I'm seeing a little bit of a different Mike Tomlin, and I'm liking what I'm seeing. He hasn't lost the bad game yet. I mean, he has not lost to a 2-win team yet, and for the rest of the season, he has no opportunity to lose to a 2-win team, because every team that we're going to play from here on out has like 5 wins already. So, he did not have the standard Tomlin really, really bad loss this season. I think he is inspiring a lot of good things with this team. Arthur Smith, obviously, like you said, I think he's been very, very good for this team. I was a little skeptical on the scheming early on, but I think as the season has gone along, I think it has aged well. Terrell Austin, interesting with me because, again, the defense has its cracks, but it hasn't completely burst at the dam quite yet, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of up in the air, but I think as a whole, if you look at 6-2 Steelers, I'm very happy with that. They haven't had their bad loss. They're 6-2. They're pretty well on their way to making the playoffs this season, and they have a real shot at winning the division if they can find a way to do well this second half. I give them an A. I think that they're doing really well this season, and I think that if they can continue that, again, I'm basing things off of what has already happened, but if they can continue what they're doing, if they can stay on this trend, I think we're in really good shape.
Well, and I'd agree, believe it or not, this might surprise you, I do agree. Tomlin has not annoyed me as much this year, especially after the 2 losses in these past 3 games. Something that has always annoyed the crap out of me with Tomlin is that I would watch all the time, I still watch it, the 2008 Super Bowl video. And Tomlin's like hype on the sideline, and he's moving around and jumping around and getting with the guys and like getting excited about the game and like really looks like he's invested in it. And the thing that's annoyed the crap out of me over the past, I don't even know how long, is that no matter what, every time they show him, he's just standing there with a blank face, even if the craziest play just happened. And I've noticed that a little bit of that difference this year, and where he's energetic and he's excited and he's invested and he's yelling at the refs. And so I like that. And that's something that has always annoyed me because it was like, wow, like what the heck, Tomlin? Like you could do that and you're not. And now he's kind of back to doing that, which I really like. And yeah, I don't think he's really done too much yet to hinder this team. So yeah, I will say that he has not been annoying me like he has the past 4 or 5 years. I definitely would say that I don't have any frustrations toward him this year yet. Besides, obviously, some timeouts, some challenges, other things like that.
The standard Mike Tomlin stuff, you know?
Yeah.
All right. Very quickly, I know you got to go here pretty soon, but we're going to hit on the Commanders game. And here's my little secret that I wasn't going to tell you before. I am going to the game with Joe Shiesty and his dad.
No way. Oh
yes. I'm so excited / scared to see what FedEx Field actually is, because I've heard it's a dump, and Joseph has been there, and he also said, yeah, it's a dump. So I'm interested to see what it's like, but I will be in the building. Shout out to Papa Joe for the tickets. They were not cheap, and Joseph and I were looking at going, and we're thinking, man, I don't know about the price of these, but Joseph's dad is carrying the load with that, so I'm really excited for this game. What do you think about this game coming up, just in maybe a minute summary, and then give your score prediction?
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're growing. So exciting. Can't wait to hear about that. I like this game. I think that both teams coming in hot, young versus old, kind of with the quarterbacks. I think that Mike Tomlin has a good record against. After the bye week, he has a good record against rookie QBs, and he tends to lose to the rookie QBs that are horrible and win no other games besides us. So I think that that's a good thing. And so I like it. I think for the Steelers, I like this. I think our defense can control it. I think, seeing how the Bears defense was able to, hold them to field goals we just did with the Giants, I think that we could do that similarly with them. And I think that our offense can still output pretty well, even though they do have a good defense. And I see a close game. I honestly see a field goal, a game-winning field goal. And I'm gonna go 30-27. Steelers win.
Wow, shootouts.
Yeah, I do. I think both defenses are going to perform well, but it's going to be one of those games that even though they do that, points are still going to be found.
Okay. So a lot of splash plays. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is in the conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year and probably already has it locked up, honestly. Yeah. I like the Steelers in this matchup, too, and it would be very Steelers-esque to kind of come back down to earth with the way that the first half has gone. That makes me a little bit nervous, but I also have the Steelers in this one. I think that they play well, and honestly, I think the defenses shine in this one a little bit more than the offenses do. I think Russ might come back down to earth a little bit, and I think Jaden Daniels has had some hiccups in recent weeks, and I think that probably continues against a very good defense that I believe that we have. I'm going to say the final score is 21-15 Steelers win.
Okay. I like it. It'll be interesting to see if they come back down to earth, because that is, one thing we're known for, so...
Hopefully not. Hopefully I can be 2 for 2 this season. It's a 1 o'clock game. I'm really interested to know how many Steeler fans will be there, because I know the Commanders fans have been very active this season. Obviously, they're 7-2, one of the best teams in the National Football League. They kind of have this new life. Dan Quinn has been running a really good ship over there. I'm really interested to see how many Steelers fans are there. It's not a far drive from Pittsburgh. I'm kind of coming up from the south to go to the game, but I'm curious to know how much black and gold is going to be there.
Yeah, that's a good point, because they do definitely feel some revitalized fan base, and just the whole team is just oh my gosh, this is the first time we've been good since 2020, and we weren't even good in 2020. So, I think that they're all just getting on the energy.
Yep. It'll be an exciting game. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be the first away game that I've been to in a couple of years. I went to a Panthers game, but that game was 75% Steelers fans. So interested to see what a truly hostile environment's going to look like. And that Mike Tomlin loves to talk about the hostile environment. So hopefully he has his guys ready to go for this week. And hopefully he brings back a W to Pittsburgh. A here we go Steelers win. Both of us predicting a win. There will be no parity in our predictions this week, but hopefully the Steelers do come away with a win. As always, the Boardman Black and Gold podcast is sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. Call 919-406-4679. David, thanks for giving your grades. If you have some grades that you want to send to us on the Instagram page at Boardman and Gold, send us your grades. Maybe rip into us for some of the grades that we have, giving the coaching staff a C, or giving the defense as a whole a C- for David, or maybe you think that I'm weird. I don't know. But give us your opinions. What do you think about these trades that we had? Give us your opinion on the grades for the first half of the season. And as far as things go, we will have our Outside Perspective episode on the Commanders coming out in a couple of days, and we will be back next week, hopefully after a win. David, do you have anything else to say this week?
Appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll see how the grades fare out, if they go up or down for both of us, because we did have quite a few differences, which will be interesting to see. But hopefully it'll be interesting to see the outsider perspective, and hopefully I'm rooting for the win. I hope you win while you're there.
I would improve to 2-0 on the season, and I think it'd be 4-1 overall. So That would be good for my record and very good for the Steelers' record, trying to be 7-2. As always, again, thank you for listening to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. We'll see you next week. Here we go, Steelers.